Hi, thank you so much for joining us in the Louie File again today. And if you've watched the last few, you will know that this is Jeff. This is turning into the Louie and Jeff broadcast, which is all right. So we talked last time about, I think the title was "What is Man?" And so I think we're going to just continue on that subject, theme, direction. So just for a quick review, we looked in Genesis 1:26 and 27, and we saw that God created man in his own image, and he gave man dominion over earth. So it's quite a high calling and task at hand, quite a task. I think we might have touched on this, but at some point shortly thereafter in the story, we see Adam and Eve in a garden that God had given them to live in, and they were faced with a decision between two trees, which essentially to me in the context of what we were saying is sort of like, here's two methods or two business plans or cultures. We were using the word culture, I think, a lot.
Yeah.
So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, God told them that was forbidden, but there's also this other tree, the tree of life. And I think that for me, for my sake here, I think this represented two minds, two methods, two floor plans,
two cultures,
business models, whatever, So they picked the wrong tree, they picked the wrong mind, and they found themselves kicked out of the business, in a sense. So God's like, oh, so you want to run your own business. So he gave them toil, and he gave them suffering. Well, I don't want to say he gave it to them, but they brought it on themselves because they disobeyed, so the toil and the strife came in. If you don't do things the way the design is made, I like to give the example sometimes of your car. If you have a vehicle and you're running out of fuel, and you go to the milk store and you fill it up full of milk, don't count on that getting you very far. Because the engine is designed to operate on a certain kind of fuel.
Right.
And milk doesn't burn in the engine properly. So self-centered, selfishness, all of that can't work in God's business.
I seen something yesterday. I was watching a movie, and this young lady, she was a basketball player, and it starts giving a glimpse of her life. And her mom was very kind of brass, abrasive as far as teaching her about basketball, and talking about not being a quitter and all this other stuff. So she takes this and she becomes the best like college player and all of this stuff. And it's like her last year, and it was like coming down to the last like couple of games, and she falls out during the game, and come to find out she had this like crazy little heart murmur and something else. But through the story, it comes down to she couldn't play ball anymore. But anyway, she's praying to God, and she's like saying, this is what I've been meant to do. You put me on this earth to do this and stuff. And she associated herself to that, and that was her thing. But when you look at everything, and you go back and you're looking at everything leading up, everything was about her. She was like, me this, me that, me this. And then when this happened and stuff, she had to really buckle down and get her schoolwork and stuff like that. Anyway, long story short, she found out that God had a bigger plan for her. That God's actual plan for her was to do this, this, and this, which was coincide with what she had been doing. But instead of becoming a professional player, she became a coach and became to speaking to other young ladies' lives.
Reproducing.
Exactly. But it's funny how in this story you see that God has the perfect plan for him, but Satan, for lack of a better word, bamboozles them into accepting this, and they're thinking that this is what they're made for, so to speak. And God's like, man, you didn't listen to me. Now you got to go through all of this. You know. So.
Well, that reminds me of the story with Abraham and Sarah, and how God gave them the promise of a child, and they came to the conclusion that Hagar was the way. And yeah, we tend to do that.
Yeah, we think we would come up with our own little plan, thinking that our plan is going to be,
and God's going to bless it.
Yeah. Maybe God didn't mean what He said. I used to always say this all the time when I was young in ministry. Is I would say, you know, hath God really said? And you know that is the lie that he's still coming up with today. Is, well, did God really say that?
Yeah, put a little bug in there.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
So
the what is man question, an enormous question. I had several verses and things written down here for our last video, which I think we only touched on the first one, and we, you know,
we jumped in. We jumped in. I think Cain and Abel.
We did touch on a lot of things, but I thought today we would kind of jump off in Psalm 8 first. Psalm 8, verse 3 through 9, and mainly focused on verse 4 and 5, really. But Psalm 8 says a psalm of David. He asked a question, which, you know, when you see yourself in a proper sense, you would ask this question too. Psalm 8:3, he says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you take thought of him, and the son of man that you care for him?" Now, I use a New American Standard, so verse 5, you know, is a little up for debate maybe with how you want to see this, but verse 5 says, "Yet you have made him a little lower than God." Some Bibles will say angels. And then it says, "And you crown him with glory and majesty. You make him to rule over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens and the fish of the sea, whatever passes through the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth." So he's like, what is a man? What is a human? What is man when compared to all this? Oh my gosh, look at the universe, look at the stars and the spinning galaxies and the animal kingdom and the waterfalls and the ocean and the, you know, I mean,
all this stuff that's so majestic.
And
then you're mindful of this little.
You're thinking, what is man? What is it with you and man?
What is this relationship? What is this man thing? Going on?
I mean, that's a good question. You know, and that's really where we all have to get. We might not say what is man, but at some point in our life we'd have to say, who am I? Why am I here? Is there a God? If so, who is this God? If not, what's the reason behind anything? I mean,
everybody has that defining moment. They got to have that moment. I mean, you know, when you're young, you're just everywhere, video games, whatever. And sometimes, though, you have young people who consider that very early. But for the most part, you just kind of hee-hawing around doing whatever. But then when you start to, I know for me, when I started to just get older, it's like, man, every day that I'm getting older, I'm like being more mindful of who I am, because then that sense of, because when you're young, you're thinking, hey, I'm alive, ain't nothing gonna happen to me. Fun. Exactly, it's all about fun. I'm never gonna die, kind of mindset. But when you start to get up there, man, you start thinking, man. Now I'm not saying I'm over the hill or anything, but I'm just saying though, it makes me think though more. It's like, you know,
I think young. I think consequences start to pile up. You know, I mean, choices you've made at a younger age start to come around, and you start to realize the result of those things. And so you start to have to think, wait a minute. When you're young, you're sowing. You know, as you get older, you start to see some of it growing, and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? You know, who am I? What am I doing here? Now,
Lord, what do you have me here for? What do you need me to be doing? What should I be doing?
A sense of purpose, And so, and like you say, some young people, I've known a few people. I know a guy right now who is a judge, and when he was younger, his aspirations, I think, might have been to be president. I'm not sure. But he became a lawyer, now he's a judge. and he came into that at a very early age, and he never veered from it. He's still, he's a judge in our county right now, and it's quite amazing to have that much vision or focus, at such a young age. But so David here is asking, he's looking at the moon and the stars and the heavens, and he's like, God, you created all this. What is man that you take thought of him, and the son of man that you care? I mean, what is so important to you about man? So in verse 5, Psalm 8:5, like I said, there's two different ways of viewing this verse. Verse 5, it says, yet you have made him a little lower than. Then we have this word translated as God or angels. Now, the way I have come to see this that's helped me is that there's a term, there's a Hebrew word called Elohim. And most of the time we think of the word Elohim, Elohim, as referring to God, but it really can be looked at as translated as heavenly being. So if it's looked at as heavenly being, then you understand why it's translated God in one place and angels in another. Because maybe it's a generic term for heavenly beings. So it could be, depending on the context, talking about Yahweh, God, or it could be talking about angels. So that, to me, is what I've come to understand why you might see it one way or the other in this verse. But either way, let's look at it this way. If it means a little lower than God, whoa, we're thinking, oh my gosh. So you think of a hierarchy here, you would think Yahweh, God, and then man, and then the angels. Now if it's the other way, it would be God, angels, and then man. So this, could have big ramifications as to how you see yourself in relation to God. Now to me, you can look in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 5 through 8. I mean, now a lot of times I look at these verses, obviously the greater context is important, but we're not trying to dissect every word and verse on this video. That's some of your homework out there.
And in your version, though, chapter 2, verse 5, what does verse 5 say?
Okay, in the New American Standard, Hebrews 5:2 says, for he did not subject to angels the world to come, concerning which we are speaking. And then it goes on, verse 6, but one has testified somewhere saying, what is man that you remember him? Or the son of man that you are concerned about him? You have made him for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and have appointed him over the works of your hands. You have put all things in subjection under his feet. For in subjecting all things to him, he left nothing that is not subject to him. But now we do not yet see all things subjected to him. Then he goes on, he says, but we do see him who is made for a little while lower than the angels, namely Jesus. So the way I've come to understand this, in the Hebrews 1, the whole chapter of Hebrews 1 is saying that God used to speak in many different ways, but now he's speaking through his Son. And then he goes into this long, extravagant explanation, the rest of Hebrews 1, saying that Jesus, the Son, is greater than the angels. So God's never elevated an angel to his right hand and says, today I have begotten you, I've made, you're my son. So in the second chapter of Hebrews, he starts talking about this in terms of Jesus being a man, and that God had put him under, being subject. It says that he, in verse 7, made him a little while lower than the angels. So the way I've always took this is that God created man a little lower than himself. You have God, man, and then angels. Man, Adam, bowed or subjected himself to Satan.
Which brought him down lower.
Put him under. So then we have God, the angelic realm, the enemy, and then we have fallen man. So therefore, God becoming a man would require him to go down under the angelic realm to get us and to bring us back up to the right hand where man was meant to always be. Oh my gosh. So
amen.
That's why I think Psalm 8 might be really pointing toward God himself
beforehand.
Yeah,
And then
the original plan,
Right,
the original
right.
design, yeah. But he gave Adam that choice, and Adam represents all of us. So we were in him, and we all, in our lives, at the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it might be, choose to agree with the fallen mind. We are tempted in some way, and we do it.
Yeah.
So we act just like Adam acted in some form or fashion.
Yeah, and I've been in environments too where, you know, somebody may be preaching about that whole fall, and you know, they'll say, you know, you know how the scripture says, well, the lady sinned, you know, the Eve sinned and not Adam and stuff like that. You know, they come from that standpoint because, or excuse me, that she was deceived and he wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that he willfully did what needed to be done to get him in their predicament. But I say all that to say that we'll look at that and be like, man, why couldn't you just do what needed to be done? And it's like, look, you know, he, just like he did what he did, you would have did the same thing.
Yeah,
you would have
prove it. Yeah,
exactly. We prove it on so many different times in our lives. When we look over our lives, we sit up there and partake of the forbidden fruit. You know?
And it was that woman you gave me.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what God says. You hearkened unto the voice of your wife, and that's what He told Abraham. You listen to Sarah. I'm trying to tell you to listen to me.
Yeah.
So essentially, what I think is okay. So here, the question is, what is man? So in Psalm 8, David is saying, what could I possibly be so important to you for? Well, the Bible is telling us that in Genesis 1, 26 and 27, that God designed us in His image, and we were meant to have dominion over the works of His hands. So God is choosing to operate in the earth realm by way of us.
Yeah. He desires to use us, and we get so jacked up because we don't realize how much He desires to use us in this realm.
Yeah.
It's like, I've come here, those of us that have accepted me, I have changed you.
Yeah.
Now I want to manifest myself through you. And He desires for us in this earth. People should be able to look at us and see His image.
Yeah. And know who He is.
Yeah.
Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Yes.
And I don't think that just meant Jesus as an individual. I think it meant man is supposed to be that display.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so many times, at least I've heard it, that, you know, Jesus was the perfect example. Okay, so if He's giving us an example and everything, shouldn't we be mindful to be molded after that example as far as being His hands and His feet?
Yeah.
And I mean, the Apostle Paul continually talks about the body of Christ. He talks about the body. And so if you and I are the body and stuff, it may not look like what you see every Sunday morning. Because really we don't live, like the manifestation of God isn't supposed to be every Sunday morning. Yeah. Just those times.
He just shows up. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, oh, Sunday morning's here. Oh, here, we need to let God do it. It's not like that.
Yeah.
You know, our day-to-day lives should be a open manifestation or expression of God on a day-to-day.
Yeah, and so in Galatians it tells us the fruit of the Spirit. So that's love, joy, peace. All of those qualities, traits, whatever you want to call it, are not ours.
Right.
They're His, but they're coming through us. They're revealed through us. You know, all through the Gospel of John, Jesus shows us how humans are meant to operate, and He says things like, I didn't come on my own initiative. He says, my teaching is not my own. I don't make up stuff. I only do what I see my Father do. And He says, don't you know that I and the Father are one, and that the Father in me is doing His works. So the example that Jesus is giving us, you know, I always have fun with this because people say, well, aren't we supposed to imitate Jesus? Well, yes, but I don't know that most people know what that means to imitate.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean let's go find some blind guy, spit on the ground, make some mud, and put it in his eye.
Exactly.
You know, let's go
Exactly.
get some little boy's lunch and,
Exactly.
and multiply it. Let's go walk on the pool water. You know, I mean, what it means is that in the moment we're hearing from God by His Spirit, and we know how to walk in it in that moment.
However that looks.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Yeah, it may not look like anything you ever did before, which is really amazing.
Well, you know, I've shared this before with different people. Is I had a situation where one of the things my wife and I used to do is we would go to the mall, and I would do a little trick to be able to gather young people and stuff to just get them to answer pertinent questions, and I would take time out to preach a short little message, you know, just a couple of minutes, you know, just enough to let them know that Jesus loves them, He died for them, you know. So anyway, in the midst of going to this mall, my wife, this particular time, we was just kind of hanging out, and I was in this bookstore, and I'm at the bookstore, and before I became born again, I was huge into self-help and motivational stuff, and I was always reading that kind of stuff. And because I just, you know, you desire to be better. When you don't know Christ, you don't know that He's
trying to improve yourself.
Exactly, He's trying to improve. So anyway, I was over in this section, and this woman was there, and next to me, she's kind of like looking around, and I just happened to be over there, just kind of looking around. And I said to the lady, I said, ma'am, everything that you're looking, I mean, God just impressed upon me to say this. And I was like, everything that you're looking for over there is in the Bible. And that's all I said. And I left. And my wife was at a shoe store and stuff, and with the kids. And so I come in there, and we're just hanging out. This woman comes running in, and she's like, I found you. And my wife's looking at me like, what's going on here, you know? So I explained to my wife what's going on, and we get a chance. I mean, this woman's bawling, and so we get a chance to talk to her, pray with her, and stuff. And it wasn't like I set her down and said, you're a sinner, you're this. And God, at that point in time, just wanted somebody to say to that woman, listen, everything that you're looking for is in the Bible.
There's another place.
Exactly. You know, they've swiped all of that stuff from here and just used it in a motivational type of way versus saying who really is what it's all about.
Yeah, Jesus said, you diligently search the scriptures, thinking that in them you have life. He said, these scriptures testify of me, yet you refuse to come to me for the life. So there you go. So God has created us in His image, a little lower than Himself. And Hebrews 1, 13 and 14, it says, but to which of the angels has He ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? The answer is none. And then verse 14, are they not all ministering spirits sent out to render service for the sake of those who will inherit salvation? So there's an aspect of the angelic realm being under God's tutelage or under His guidance that leads us to Christ is the point. And people talk about guardian angels, and I've heard people joke about how I already went through 3 or 4 because they just couldn't take it anymore and quit. And I think that probably is true about my own life. But
and this Louie guy, Lord, listen.
He's driving up trees. He's overdosing. He's just acting a fool. I can't do it anymore. I quit. So God had to hire another one. But the whole point, the point here is that these angels are there to minister and to get us to a place for salvation.
Yes.
To restore us to our right place.
Yes. Yes.
See, an angel that is in God's will is not at rivalry with man.
That's right.
He's not trying to take our place.
No.
He knows his place.
Yeah.
Was it The Rock used to say, know your role?
Yeah. Yeah.
He knows his role. And that's the same way we are as Christians. Once we're born again, we realize no one can take our place as an individual. So I'm not threatened or hampered by the other members of the body. That's not my enemy. I'm not.
It should never be. I mean, you're who you are. I'm who I am. I mean, you joked yesterday. I mean, last time we were on is me being a barber and stuff, and that's my profession. And then knowing my profession and looking at the hair, I mean, you're like, oh my gosh, But
I can't turn my back on
it. Exactly. But God's uniquely made him as me also, and he has his giftings and callings and what God desires for him to do, and the same for me. And there's no competition here. It's all about just what we need to do for Christ.
Yeah, yeah. Because your right hand is not competing with your left.
Yeah, exactly.
Right not competing with your big toe. I mean, it works together. That's our body.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So we are created in God's image, meant to be ruling his creation. Now, what that looks like, what that means in its fullest extent, remains to be seen. In Romans 8, it does say that all of creation is groaning and longing to be set free, longing for the sons of God to be revealed, so that creation itself would be liberated or set free from its bondage to decay. So sin brings in death, which causes decay and decomposition or whatever, things to break down. But God's Spirit, who is life, comes back into man. Man becomes an everlasting life.
Come on, man.
Now, all of creation, sin-soaked creation, is going to still fall apart, and even our bodies are going to fall apart, but there's going to be a day when the sons of God, the full manifestation of who we really are in him, with this new body, this indestructible life is going to appear, and we're going to get to see not only what the garden might have been like,
come on now,
but I got a feeling it's going to be even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
And man, I sometimes sit and imagine, God loves us so much, and he's gonna do so much. He's gonna go exceedingly above.
That's right.
So anything that we can imagine, it's not gonna be as good as what he's thought. I mean, any person. Let me rephrase this. God, in his perfectness, sits and looks at man, and he has designed us so perfectly in his eyes, and he knows our thoughts, our intents of our heart.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows everything about us, that when all of this is said and done, for him to be like, I've got a place for you.
Yeah.
That's perfect for you. That's everything. I mean, every little thing that you can think of, he's going to have it for you. No, it's not going to be that Xbox or anything like that. But it is going to be something that's going to relate to who you are through him.
Wow. So
glorious time.
That's it. In Isaiah, I think he was talking about the new heavens and a new earth.
Yes.
A lot of people say the lion will lie down with the lamb.
Yes.
But that's not really what it says.
Okay.
It says the wolf will lie down with the
Yeah.
lamb.
Yes.
It does say that the lions, I think, will graze with the cattle.
Yeah. So their whole everything gets to all the carnivores.
Yeah, the bloodthirsty.
Exactly. It's gonna turn back to where they're gonna be vegetarians.
Peaceful.
And
there won't be kill or be killed anymore. Right now, that's what we see in the animal kingdom and in humans. It's kill or be killed. The biggest bomb, the best weapon. But that's all going to get reversed, and it says in Isaiah, it says that the little child will even play by a snake hole, and you won't have to worry about it. You won't have to worry about it because it can't be killed by that snake. It won't be, Anyway, that's a future thinking there. But so, what is man? So we were fearfully and wonderfully made and designed to do and to be what God has set us out here to be. But we see early on in the pages of Genesis, where after the fall of man, it quickly goes bad. I mean, the fall is bad enough, and then it gets handed down to the next generation right away with Cain and Abel. So we see where Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden at the end of Genesis 3. And then at the beginning of Genesis 4, it talks about Adam and Eve coming together, and she gives birth to Cain, and then there's Abel. So we have this sibling rivalry right off the bat because of the fall. Interesting verse in Genesis 5, verse 3. Genesis 1:26 and 27, it says God made man in his image. Genesis 5, verse 3. Did you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. Genesis 5, verse 3.
Yeah.
And Adam lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness after his image, and called his name Seth.
So God made Adam, man in God's own image. Adam fell. And then when Adam had a son named Seth, he was in his image.
Yeah.
So Seth is in the image of his father, Adam.
Come on, man.
I don't know, that just kind of makes me think that maybe the point here is that although Seth was a good son and he took the place of Abel, he still was in the image of his earthly fallen father.
Yeah.
There's something
Right.
still, he's not,
Right.
Seth, it doesn't say Seth was in God's image.
Exactly.
Now, I open up a can of worms here about what the image of God really is, but Seth was still susceptible because of the fall.
Exactly.
I guess is my point.
Exactly.
He wasn't free of the problem.
Well, he had everything that Adam had in that fallen state.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to point that out. So bring this back now to Genesis 4. We have Cain and Abel, and we see an amazing story unfold here of Cain and Abel. Now, there's some things in the scripture, especially in these early pages of Genesis, that we have to assume. Sometimes when you see something, there's nothing explained about it, so we have to backtrack in just a logical sense, or just think this through without it being explicitly written. Cain and Abel are both bringing offerings to God. Nowhere prior to this does it tell us how they learned this or why they were doing it, other than the fact that we must assume Adam and Eve had taught them.
Yeah, because when they sinned, God went and took an animal, killed it, and used that to cover them.
Yeah. So there was bloodshed.
Exactly.
There was a death, a life for a life.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So you got that example.
Yeah. And whatever they might have taught them.
What was taught maybe from that moment was like boom, and then it became. Yeah.
So Adam had come to realize in some way what it was going to take. So he had to hand that down to Cain and Abel. So it says in Genesis 4, starting in verse 2, again she gave birth to his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions, and the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain told Abel his brother, and it came about when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. Wow. So, both of them brought something as an offering. And we have Abel was a keeper of sheep, maybe, and goats, I don't know, flocks. Cain was a gardener in a sense. He tilled the ground. So they both brought something from themselves or from what they had and offered it. Cain brought the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought a lamb, the firstling, and it says the firstlings.
Mm-hmm.
So the first portion, the firstling of the flock and fat portions. And the Lord looked at Abel's offering, he's like, that's what I'm talking about. But when he looked at Cain, he's like, nah, that doesn't help me. I'm not into carrots and tomatoes and cabbage today. Right. That's not what I'm looking for, Cain. And my thought is that I have to believe that Cain possibly knew better.
Yeah. Well, I heard somebody say like this, a particular Bible teacher. He was saying that this is one of those situations where Cain was trying to come his own way to God.
Yeah.
And that, evidently the proper way was what Abel was doing as far as bringing the type of sacrifice he brought and stuff. And Cain didn't want to do that. He's like, I'm just going to approach God in my own way. And that's the viewpoint that he came from, is that he was trying to approach God in his own way, and then making reference to how that's what a lot of people do now.
Yeah, it's almost like it's coming from something of Cain, and Abel knew he didn't birth that sheep.
Right.
So he's offering a life for his life. He's offering blood for his blood. Mm-hmm. But I think also is that I'm just jumping out here on this, but I think Abel understood that lamb was God's thing. I'm just giving back to God what he gave me to give him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cain was looking at, I grew this.
I was getting ready to go there. That Cain looked at it as, look, I done worked hard. This is my blood, sweat and tears. I've done that. I
sweat over it, which is part of the fall. God told Adam, you're going to sweat, trying to get your food from the ground. So Cain's almost offering part of the curse back or something. I mean, it's kind of weird, but Cain does come across somewhat full of himself here. He's very angry. He knows that God is not really regarding his offering. He's angry and his countenance fell. So he's pouting. He's got his bottom lip stuck out.
And God's done told him what he needed to do.
So God, he asked him, he said, why are you angry? Why is your countenance falling? Why are you sulking? Why are you acting like this?
Yeah.
But look, this got very intriguing for me in here. In verse 7, it's God's saying, if you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door and its desires for you, but you must master it. So God is showing Cain the situation he's in.
Showing him even how it's going to go down.
Yeah. Sort of like the two trees.
Right.
A choice is being made again. He's saying, look, you can do this, but this is what you get. If you do this, then you'll do well. I mean, but I thought, if you do well, it made me think of in the New Testament when the rich young ruler came to Jesus and said, what must I do? Good teacher. And Jesus said,
wait a minute,
I'm not good. There's none good but God.
Right.
So in other words, there's none who does good. That's what it says in Romans. It says that all of us have sinned. There's none that do good. There are no good in people alone. So I've kind of gathered something from this that I feel like God was saying to Cain, if you do well, but God all along knows he can't. So he's provoking Cain to try harder. Because he knows that Cain hasn't tried hard enough yet. Because he still thinks what he's doing is enough.
I was going to say, he's already exposed himself and saying, I've done this.
Yeah.
Here's my Yeah.
And so this made me think, there is no commandments. The law had not been given.
Right.
That's hundreds of years later with Moses. But yet there is a command here that God gives Cain. He says, do well. You do. So in other words, could God be saying to Cain, do good and it'll work? But all along God's knowing he can't do good. See, Cain needs to be provoked to try harder, so he will come to the conclusion that he can't, and then he will realize he needs an offering, a different offering.
That's good.
You see, I mean,
that's good. That's a good picture. Yes.
In Romans 7, the Apostle Paul tried to stop coveting, because the 10th commandment says, "Thou shalt not covet." So the Romans 7, the Apostle Paul said, I'm trying not to covet, but the more I try, the more I covet.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to realize there's something was operating in him that wasn't him. And he said, who will free me? Who will rescue? Who will deliver me?
Mm-hmm.
But it only came after he tried so hard, and then he was able to let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what that God's telling Cain. He's wanting him to realize that there's no amount of trying really that he can do it. But you don't discover that until you try.
Right. Right.
And he says, but if you don't do well, if you don't do good, if you don't find it in yourself, which you really can't, then sin is crouching.
Mm-hmm.
Crouching. What crouches?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an animal, a person, something, Now, some people I've heard say that this says sin, is talking about it being a sin offering, is crouching at the door. And they translate this completely different. But it doesn't bother me because, now I hope this isn't confusing, but in 2 Corinthians it says that God made Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin.
Right.
So the offering for sin became sin.
Mm-hmm.
They became one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you could look at it that way. So God's saying, look, you have an offering, you have a sin offering, or you have sin itself that's going to take you over. If you do not do well, sin is crouching. So this could be, it says, at the door, and its desire. So sin is crouching and has desire. So it sounds like sin here is some kind of person. It's they call it personified, sin personified, which is exactly what you see in Romans 6 and 7, where Paul talks about sin is desiring, sin is deceiving me, sin takes advantage of the law and deceives me, sin is dwelling in me, it's not I but sin in me that's doing it, So we see where this all comes from.
Well, and when you think about in regards to that you see that, Abel already knew, hey, I didn't produce this, what I'm bringing to you or anything, this is it. And back to what you said as far as him trying to do this is of my sweat, this is of, and trying, well, I think you even said it, trying to bring a curse back up unto as an offering. Yeah. And that's what so many people kind of do, as far as they when they have that mindset of I, me, I can do this, I can do. But Abel already was under the mindset, I know I can't do this and stuff. I'm gonna approach God in the proper way, and from this
if you don't do this, I'm done.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's a life for a life in a sense.
Yeah.
So how does all this fit into what is man? Well, how it fits in, I think, is that God's design for man was for us to be a vessel and a temple for him to live in. In the fall, something else, someone else took up residence in us.
Yeah.
So when he partook of the wrong tree, the wrong mind, 1 John chapter 4 says that we have the spirit of truth or the spirit of error. So I would say that the spirit of error is this sin that we're talking about that's crouching and desiring. So Cain is at a point of decision making. Just like all of us have a moment, what we call the age of accountability. We're presented with something, we know it's wrong, and then we do it. That's sin. It's not sin if we don't know.
Right.
It's sin when we know and still do it.
Right.
That's sin. That's where Cain's at. He's at this point, this crossroads.
Yeah. God's done told you, look.
Here's how to fix this.
This is what you need to do. And he's, I got this.
Yep. And he turns around and he kills Abel. So instead of humbling himself and coming to God saying, God, what is it that you want? What is it that I need to do for you? How do I do this properly with what you are after? Instead of that, he decides he's going to shut down Abel, thinking that's going to cleanse or clear his conscience, which actually brings in more problems.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny how he looked at his brother, and his brother didn't do nothing wrong. He's coming to God, humble. Hey God, this is, I'm bringing this to you, and he's looking at something. His self is the problem.
Yeah.
And he's looking at his brother like his brother's the problem.
Yep, and that's And I would go out on a limb and say, I bet I would, if I was a betting man, that Abel would have given him a lamb.
Yes.
If he would have just simply asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I think. Now, this just came to me. I don't know how long we've been going this morning, but we had a whole other conversation before this one. But in 1 John chapter 3, he brings this story out. Oh my gosh! And here it is. 1 John 3. Oh my gosh! I don't know where to start. Verse 9.
Okay.
I'm going to read 1 John 3, verse 9 through 12.
Okay.
Kind of what you were just saying. 1 John 3, 9. No one who is born of God practices sin, because his seed abides in him, and he cannot sin because he's born of God. By this, the children of God and the children of the devil are obvious, or are manifest. Anyone who does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor the one who does not love his brother. For this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of the evil one, and slew his brother. And for what reason did he slay him? Because his deeds were evil, and his brothers were righteous.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
So he's saying here that Cain was of the evil one. I had a guy one time in the jail when I was down there. The guys came in, and he said, before you get started, let me ask you a question. I said, what? I was a little scared. Sometimes you don't know what kind of question they're going to ask. He said, how did he put it? He said, was Satan Cain's dad, or was Cain the son of Satan, or something like that? And that's what came to me. It was right there in 1 John. I said, well, let's read this. Now, some people take this the wrong way. I think the point here is that Cain was operating from that same spirit. Obviously, Adam and Eve were his parents.
Right.
I mean, in the physical, literal sense.
Right.
So it's not that Eve had sex with the serpent.
Exactly.
See, and some people have taken that and ran with it.
Wow.
And
really?
that is not, that has been a thing that's been
really?
taught.
I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And that Cain was a literal offspring of Satan, or the serpent. I think what we're talking about here is a spiritual offspring. It doesn't mean that it's a physical, oneness with the serpent. Or anyway, point here is that Cain was of the evil, the wicked one, and that's why he slew his brother. Jesus called the devil a murderer from the beginning. So we had the wrong spirit operating in Cain. So to just kind of tie this together for the moment here, so we can be done for today, we'll pick up some more in this next time. But God created man with the intention that he, by way of his spirit, would live in us. And that through us, we with he, as one, would rule and dominate his planet. Adam chose the wrong way. Another spirit was brought into man. Cain manifests that spirit right away by killing his brother out of jealousy, anger. All of this boiled up and bubbled up in him because he wasn't willing to do what he was supposed to do. So the wrong spirit is now on display, the spirit of error. So, I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything else you want to say, but I'm pretty much willing to leave that here for today, and we can maybe start at this point next time.
Amen.
And dig through it a little bit more. But
wow, that's good stuff. I mean, you see all of this taking place, and it's not like God wasn't trying to give him an opportunity, but like you said, though, also there's that picture of maybe opening the door for him to saying, I've got to do better. Back to the whole I thing and stuff. And I think
self-improvement.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly. Self-improvement.
Yeah.
And I also look at believers though, in that some believers kind of get kind of like that.
Oh yeah.
They don't understand that everything that God has done and what he desires to do through us, that they get into that I moment. Maybe not on the Cain level.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that God wants every area of us to be dedicated to him instead of us trying to do it. I know for myself, I did not get fixed until I fixed on him.
Yeah, that's right. And and there's another little thing about this. Cain offered blood.
Yes. Yes.
Not Cain, I'm sorry. Abel offered a blood sacrifice, and Cain was at odds with that.
Yeah.
So as a believer, you have received the blood, and that puts you at odds with all other religious systems, all self-improvement programs, all political agendas, everything that is bloodless in their sacrifice. I never thought of this till just now.
That's good.
All of the world system that is not received and going by the blood of the Lamb is going by their own stuff, which is from the spirit of error, and it seeks to kill you.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus said the world's going to hate you. I mean, that's the whole point, is that you're trusting in someone else and not yourself. It automatically puts you at odds with all those that are trusting themselves. I mean,
that's it.
I mean, so you see, this right here is like the beginning of what the whole world becomes. This mixed bag, if you will, of those trusting by faith in the blood and those who aren't.
I wanted to share this quote that I wrote down as I always put it like a little side note. I read in a little booklet here. It said, someone said, I read God's, the person I read, they said this: God's look saves, but the gaze sanctifies. We should spend a lot of time looking at him. And I just thought that was very profound, because, we look to the book and when we go to God and we're like, I've done all I can, Lord, and you give your life to him and stuff, well, you're looking to him, you get saved, and now you should continually look to him. Yeah. And this is not none of this to stay saved. No, what I'm saying is that once you look to him and he saves you, in order to have a true manifestation of him in your life, you continually look on the person who has saved you, and you look on that person and he starts to change you. Not you changing yourself. Yeah. He's doing the changing is what I'm saying.
That's right. That's exactly the way it works. It's his life in us. Yeah. Wow. What is man? All right, so I guess we'll wrap this up today. Next time, hopefully there'll be a next time. We can't predict the future.
That's right.
We'll probably start maybe right around here, and I don't know where it'll take us, but we were created in God's image to operate as one with God's Spirit and to have dominion over the earth. What does that look like? That's kind of what we're talking about. And we see here in this story in Genesis 4, two clear ways to come to God. One is accepted and one isn't. The one that isn't doesn't turn out so well. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today in the Louie File, and we hope that you will, if you haven't seen the video or so before this one, look it up. What is man? And I might number these, maybe be a part 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing, to make it simpler to watch them in order, because we're kind of going down the road here. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, for coming again. And
thanks for having me, Louie.
We will see you the next time. Same Louie channel, or same. Anyway, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.